and this is Jason, and we are back today with another podcast. Today we are going to be doing our top 10 films of 1996. So if you haven't been keeping track of our show, we've basically been doing a countdown from 1995 when we first met all the way up to basically 2019 or hopefully 2020. We've been doing a top 10 list, and so we're just going to continue off with our next year, and this will be kind of our second part of that. So it'll be the 1996 top 10 films. 1996, Jason, how was that year for you?
That what you mean in real life or in movies?
It doesn't really matter.
Both,
Either
yeah.
one's fine. So.
Yeah, well, both were pretty good. 96 was the year I graduated from high school. You were still in high school for another year. Even though, but yeah, it was a good year. It was a good year personally. And it was a great year for movies. I had like a really, really hard time narrowing these movies down. Like it was almost like chopping off an arm to get it down to 10 movies, to be honest. So it's a pretty good year. And a lot of the movies that are on the list for me anyway, I'm just a lot more, I guess, passionate about than the ones in 95. Not right. To say that my top 10 for 95, I love those movies, of course, but looking over the list of movies from 96, it was just like, man, it was like, these movies get me right here. So it was tough. It was a great year for movies, apparently. How about you?
Yeah, 96 was a great year. Like I said, I was a junior in high school, so it was a great year. Like I said, still in high school. So, but there were a lot of great films that year. I don't know what all the other years are going to look like as we go through this series and work our way back up to like 2020 at some point, I'm assuming. But I know for this year, I gave 8 films 4 or 5 stars basically that year, which is really, really rare for me. On a typical year, it's more like a 1 to 3 films usually will get about 5 stars for me, and this one got 8 films got 5 stars for me. So that's
incredible. That's got to be a record.
Yeah, that's got to be a record. So I don't know what the other years look like, but I know this year I definitely gave a lot of 5-star films, which is weird because 95 I gave less films 5 stars, but I feel like that was the better year only because I had like 2 films that made like my top 10 of all time. You know what I mean? So I think that made a little bit of a difference also.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But no, it was a great year.
Yeah.
Really great year.
Yeah.
Well, with that said, then, let's get into it, man. Start off with your number 10.
My number 10 for 1996 is Waiting for Guffman.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is it's a mock documentary. I love mock documentaries in general. They've kind of run their course now. There's almost too many now, but at the time in 1996, they were still fairly rare. They weren't on, every other show on TV wasn't a mock documentary. So, but yeah, it's Christopher Guest, one of my favorite filmmakers. He hasn't made anything in a while, but he made a few in the 90s and the early 2000s, excuse me, that are really, really good. And Waiting for Guffman is right up there at the top. So it's a mock documentary about, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry about that. Frog in my throat. But yeah, it's about a small town community theater group. And that's really it. I mean, like if you describe the plot, it may not sound very interesting, but it's hilarious. And Christopher Guest is really a master at those kind of movies. It's got really funny people in it. In addition to himself, there's Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara, who are always great together. They're always cast together. Right now, they're really popular for Schitt's Creek. I don't know if you watch that at all, but
yeah, I do. That's a great show.
Yeah, that's kind of a mock documentary again. But they're in there. They're great together as always. Parker Posey, Fred Willard, Bob Balaban. Just a great cast of really funny people improvising really funny stuff. So if you just want to laugh constantly, this is one of those movies. So that's my number 10 for 96, Waiting for Guffman.
Cool stuff. Yeah. I haven't seen that one in a really long time. I do remember it being a very funny, definitely one that I enjoyed overall. It's not going to make my top 10, unfortunately, or even my runner-ups, but it was a good film. I definitely remember enjoying it. I do remember laughing, but just, it was a really tough year to make cuts, and unfortunately that one would probably be more like in my like top 30 or something like that for that year.
Right.
So
Cool.
yeah, it was a good year though, so that's nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing to be ashamed of. So
right,
great choice, man. Great choice. Well, my number 10, for some reason I thought I owned it, but I guess I don't. But my number 10, I don't own, so I have an image. So my number 10 is actually going to be Happy Gilmore.
Ah,
so yeah,
good.
Yeah. So just a really, really funny film. Stars Adam Sandler. It's great in there. Basically, he, his mom gets put in like in a home, and so he's trying to like figure out a way to earn some money to get her out, get their house back, and that kind of stuff. And so he ends up taking up like golf and gets really, really good at it. And it's just got a lot of laughs. It's really, really funny. Some of it's slapstick comedy, of course, but it's one that always kind of resonated with me. This is actually, I didn't give this one 4 stars or 5 stars, actually. This one got a 4.5. So, but very close to perfect for me. But yeah, it's just one of those movies I just fell in love with as soon as the first time I watched it. And it still holds up today. I haven't watched it in a few years, but I always enjoyed, the comedy on that. And this is, in my opinion, back when Sandler was like at top of his game. He was making like these really, really great, funny films. He's always been, I guess, a little hit or miss, if you will, but this was like, I felt like back in the 90s, he was making like really, really good, funny films that I really enjoyed and watched quite a few of them. So number 10 for me is Happy Gilmore.
Cool. I love Happy Gilmore. It is not in my top 10. It will be in my runner-ups. It's just a testament to how good that year was. That, like, if you had asked me if it would be in my top 10, I'd be like, oh yeah, of course that's in my top 10 for that year. But just looking at that year, I just couldn't, it just didn't make it in there. But that's the movie that made me like Adam Sandler. Cause before that, I didn't think I was a fan. Like I didn't, I didn't think I liked him. And my nephew and my niece actually made me sit down and watch it, when it came out on VHS, and it's hysterical. It's just a really great comedy, and it's got a lot of heart, and it's even got a little bit of depth, and it was just way more interesting than I thought it was going to be. So and then like that was a real hot streak for him, because like The Wedding Singer came out next, and that was just as good. So that's what turned me into an Adam Sandler fan, and I haven't watched it in a really long time. I don't know if I would give it 5 stars or not, to be honest, but I'm sure that I would still like it. So Happy Gilmore.
I think funny is funny. You know what I mean? It's hard to get too dated when it's funny. Comedy is comedy. Doesn't matter if it was made in the 1930s or if it was made in 2020. I think that if it's funny, it should always be, for the most part, funny. I mean, granted, you may not get some of the relevance and stuff like that if it's an older film or whatever case may be. But if they're referencing something. But yeah, this one's not. It's been maybe about 4 or 5 years since I've seen it, but it didn't feel dated at all to me. I just thought it was just a really good, funny comedy that I could break out at any point in time. So
yeah, and even I haven't seen it in probably much longer than that, to be honest. But I watched it so much back in the day that I still remember like all the funny lines. So
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So go on.
All right, sounds good. Well, number 9.
I don't know if you've ever seen this one, actually. My number 9 for 1996 is a movie called Lone Star. You ever seen that one?
I've heard of it. I don't know if I've seen that one, though.
It's really, really good. It looks like a Western. I don't want to get your hopes up too high. There's not a whole lot of action, but it's kind of a Western, sort of. But it's a complicated movie to describe, because it is, at heart, it's a murder mystery, essentially. Chris Cooper, who is one of my favorite actors, plays the sheriff of this town in Texas, and they discover a skeleton that's been buried in the dirt for 40 years, and it's his predecessor who just went missing before nobody knew what happened to him. So all of a sudden they have a skeleton in the desert. They're trying to find out what happened to him. But at the same time, so that's like the main story, but it's so much more than a murder mystery. It's about gentrification. It's about so many things, about the history of this place, and it just weaves all these storylines together. And it's got a really cool cast. It's got Matthew McConaughey before he was really a big name. Elizabeth Pena, Chris Christopherson. It's just a really great cast. It's a great mystery. It's a great class study. It's got so much going on, and it just does it all perfectly. So that's my number 9 for 1996 is Lone Star, John Sayles.
Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't recall seeing it. I don't think that I've seen that one before. So obviously, I can't comment too much on it. But maybe one I might check out at some point in time. I don't know. We'll have to see. It did look like a western from the cover, but and I love a good western. But it might be one that maybe I'll catch at some point in time. So
yeah,
but cool.
It's good.
Nice choice for number 9.
Cool.
My number 9 is, I think, the only other film that I don't own from the list. Well, from my top 10 anyways. So I just never own this one. My number 9 is actually going to be When We Were Kings. Great film, documentary film. Muhammad Ali basically, just kind of capitalizes, kind of his story in a way, and the some of the big fights and that sort of stuff. Muhammad Ali has just always been a great icon. He's one of my favorite sports athletes of all time. So when I saw this film, I was like, wow, this is really awesome. And to be honest with you, because he's a little bit before our time. I mean, he pretty much retired from boxing when we were like infants. So I never got to really see a lot of his fights and that sort of stuff. And so this was great just to kind of watch, his preparation for fights, and, the storyline was good. It was just a really moving film for me, and just, a really great, actually one of my favorite boxing films, if you will, even though it's a documentary, but, there is boxing in there as well. So, but yeah, just a really good film, and one that I love, and my number 9 for 1996. So,
yeah. That's one of my favorite movies for sure, and that is definitely that's coming up for me a little bit later on. So, but yeah, I love When We Were Kings. It's one of my favorite films, favorite documentaries. But yeah, Muhammad Ali is one of my favorite people. I mean, to me, it's worth it just to get so much footage of Muhammad Ali being Muhammad Ali.
No, I agree. No, he's it's just like I said, he's just a character in itself. I mean, he's just so charismatic, and he was such a great boxer, and political, and you know what I mean. And it's sad that his mind deteriorated later in life and that sort of stuff. Probably
not his mind. He had MS.
Well, the Parkinson,
his head, Parkinson's. Yeah, his brain was still sharp, but his motor functions.
Yeah,
if I'm right.
Yeah, I heard there might have been a little dementia in there as well, but I don't know. But yeah, just like I said, but when he was young and fighting and boxing and that kind of stuff, he was just such a great advocate for boxing and for politics and just for sports in general, and just a really great icon, and you know what I mean, just a really interesting person. So, and that's just I would definitely urge anyone that if you haven't seen When We Were Kings, to definitely check that out. You don't necessarily have to be a fan of boxing. You don't even necessarily have to be, well, I don't know. You might have to be somewhat of a fan of Muhammad Ali, but definitely you should check it out. If you don't know a lot about him or a lot about his story, then it would be a great film to see. So number 9,
And on top of that, like the music is great too.
Yeah. It's got a good soundtrack as well.
It delves into it was Zaire in 1974. They had this big historic match between him and George Foreman, and at the same time, they planned this huge concert in Zaire with James Brown, Spinners, Bill Withers, all these great performances. And there's a little bit of that in there. There's actually a separate documentary that's just about the concert too, called Soul Power, which is really great. And actually,
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it. Yeah.
I'll just go ahead and jump ahead a little bit here. But this is the brand new Criterion Blu-ray of When We Were Kings, and it actually has that other documentary, the entire thing, about just the concert as a special feature. So, but cool. Yeah, I love that movie, obviously.
Cool. Yeah, and I do as well. Great.
Yeah.
All right, all the way on number 8 already. So yeah.
Okay, all right. Number 8 for me for 1996 is That Thing You Do. So, That Thing You Do is one of my favorite films. I love movies, and music are like my 2 favorite passions. So I love a good movie that can combine both, and That Thing You Do is definitely one of those. It's set in the 1960s. It's about a garage band who becomes a one-hit wonder, essentially. But it does a really good job of depicting the period and depicting the music industry, how a band can rise and fall in a really short amount of time. And I really like the 1960s period detail. The music is great. I've listened to the soundtrack. I can't even count how many times I've listened to the soundtrack. And it's just it's very funny. It's very moving. It's a great film about the music industry. Tom Hanks is a big music fan, and he wrote and directed and co-starred in the movie. And it's just a really entertaining movie. It's one of those that I can put on anytime, and it puts me in a better mood instantly. So everyone needs those kind of movies that, I've had a rough day, I just need to feel better, and that's one of those movies for me. So, and I also like that it doesn't sugarcoat the music industry. Like, it shows music, fame for all the good things and the bad things. That it will build you up, and then it'll tear you down when your moment is past. So it does. It's got a real realistic edge to it that you might not expect. So that's one of my favorite films, and that's my number 8 for 1996.
Cool, man. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely. Definitely something. Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of that film, to be honest with you. The story, I guess, didn't interest me. I don't know if I just wasn't into that type of genre of music or whatever it was, but for me, it just didn't do much for me. So it's been quite some time since I watched it, but from what I recall, it definitely does delve into a lot of the things that you talked about in terms of the music industry and how tough it can be, especially for one-hit wonders and that sort of stuff. But it was just not a film that I would probably revisit for any reason. I just didn't feel a need to revisit that particular film. I don't recall hating it or anything like that by any means, but just wasn't one that I could say that I liked. So, it would definitely make my top probably 200 for. But hey, man, that's pretty good. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's probably been like about 24 years since you've seen it, so that means you should probably maybe check it out again. We've grown, Kier. We've grown. So
I see.
Yeah.
Maybe, probably not, but you never know. So
when the quarantine's over, I'll bring it over for you. So
you do that, man. I could definitely use some good. We're gonna have a little bonfire, so you come on by.
Man, come on.
No, I just messing with you. Well, cool. Well, my number 8, and I've actually shown this disc before, because it's a three pack set. So, but my number 8 is actually going to be.
I know what it is.
Set It Off.
Yep.
So yeah. Once again, it's a 3-pack series here, so that's why that's why I just only showed part of it.
Yeah.
Friday was in the last show for 95, so for 96, number 8 is Set It Off. And what I really like about Set It Off, and this one actually I did give 5 stars. What I really like about it, it is another film that is set in the hood, and it is another bank robbery film, similar to like a Heat type film where it's but it doesn't start off as really a bank robbery film. What I like about it is it's got quite a few stars in it. It's got Jada Pinkett Smith now. She was just Pinkett at that time. Queen Latifah, Vivica A. Fox, and Kimberly Elsis. I don't know who that is, but yeah, she's the other girl. I mean, I don't know her, but she's the other girl in the film. But what I really liked about it is they were all in the hood. They all kind of were having their own little struggles, in different capacities, deaths in the family, money problems, whatever case may be. And they were just basically kind of like regular girls that decided to, get together and friends and essentially take up a life of crime, and she's got a really interesting story. It's got some good action. It's funny in a lot of parts. It's sad in some parts as well because there's a lot of things that happen to like their family members and stuff like that, especially in the beginning. But a really gritty action film. And I don't like it better than like Heat or some of those other films, but I did like it that it is from like a female's perspective. Like if girls decided they wanted to rob bank and they had their crew and that sort of stuff, and so it kind of is in that same kind of vein where it's like 4 or 5 people that get together and decide to rob banks and that kind of stuff. So just a really good story. So for me, number 8 is Set It Off. If you haven't had a chance to see it, I definitely highly recommend that one as well. So.
Cool. Yeah, I like Set It Off a lot. It's not in my top 10. Probably not in my runner-ups, but that doesn't mean I didn't like it because I liked a lot of movies that year. But yeah, it's a really good movie. I haven't seen it in a really long time. Probably, man, I watched it several times when it was a new release, newish release. It was one of those that I bought on VHS but never upgraded to DVD or Blu-ray. So, I probably haven't seen it in close to 20 years, but I do. I remember a lot of things about it really well, so it did stick with me for sure. I liked it a lot, but I haven't seen it in a while. But yeah, it's a very good movie. Very good movie.
Cool.
Yeah, and also it's kind of, I didn't see it, but that movie that came out last year, The Kitchen.
Yeah.
It looked like it was kind of going in that same, ordinary women who are forced to take up crime, and I thought that movie looked pretty good, and then it just got really, really trashed by the critics. And not that the critics are always right, but whenever, it always does put a damper on it if it just gets universally panned, which it did. So
right.
I don't know if anybody wants to stick up for that movie, but it looks good, but then I didn't see it.
Yeah, I didn't see The Kitchen either. It didn't. I thought the same thing actually as you did. I thought that it looked interesting when I first saw like a trailer for it, and then once the reviews were like so terrible on it, and then it like said it was in theaters for like a blink of an eye, I just never got around to seeing it. And I just said, well, probably why bother, because clearly no one liked it that saw it, because it didn't light up the box office and the critics hated it. So it's kind of like that's a twofold for me. Like if people, unless I really, really wanted to see the film initially, I'm probably not going to go. You know what I mean? That's just
it would need to have one or the other. Like, some good reviews, a poor box office, or high box office with, what you're saying.
Yeah, because the critics aren't always right and the fans are not always right. But, if one or the two is leaning more than the other, then if I was interested in initially, I'll probably go check it out. So.
Yeah. But both not doing well, and I was already kind of on the fence.
Yeah, that's a no-go for me.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, man, number 7.
My number 7 is for 1996. I really don't like this DVD cover, but it is Citizen Ruth. So, yeah. I just watched it again because, I was at a point where I had 11 movies for my top 10 that I didn't feel like I could part with one. And this was one that I hadn't seen in a really long time. So I was like, let me watch that again and see. And it's just as strong as it always was. So yeah, Citizen Ruth, great movie. It's bless you. It's a film by Alexander Payne, who a lot of people know not from this movie, but from movies like Election, which I think is just as good. And then he's got some more popular movies that I think are not quite as good, like a lot of people like Nebraska a lot. A lot of people like Sideways a lot. About Schmidt. Yeah, about Schmidt, The Descendants. He did Downsizing, which I think is his only bad movie with Andrew Payne. Yeah, that was not very good. But I think Citizen Ruth and Election are the best he's ever been. Like, I like those other movies except for Downsizing, but to me, Citizen Ruth and Election are the best. And this is a movie, it's Laura Dern's best performance ever, in my opinion, the best role she's ever had, as just this completely unlikable, horrible, alcoholic, homeless, drug addict woman who's like pregnant for the 5th time and just like wants to get an abortion, And then she gets kind of in the middle of this crossfire between like the pro-life camp and the pro-choice camp. And she gets basically adopted by both sides and used as a pawn against the other. And she doesn't really even care. And that's what, somehow she's so good in this movie and it's so well written that somehow you still kind of like her and you're pulling for her, even though she's just a horrible person for the most part. You still want her to come out of it a better person. And, I think she does, but it's very funny. It's provocative. It's very, moving somehow, even though this person is horrible. But it's one of my favorite movies for sure. And after watching it for the first time in probably at least 15 years, it's every bit as good as it always was. So my number 7 is Citizen Ruth.
Cool. Yeah, I like Citizen Ruth. That is a funny one. I do remember enjoying it and liking it quite a bit. It didn't make my top 10 or even my runner ups, but like you said, it was a good year, and it was really tough to make those cuts. But yeah, it was very funny. I do like it. I did like that she, like you said, she was a likable character, even though she was not a good person by any means, but she was likable in that sense. And well, I think that also the way that the film was shot, like the people on both sides almost were in some capacity a little less likable than she was, because they were both like using her, you know what I mean? So that's kind of what made her likable, is that when the people around her are not always the most likable, I'm sure they all thought they had good intentions for whatever their cause was, whether they're pro or anti-abortion, but that kind of made her seem a little bit more likable, because she was kind of like being pulled between both houses that were adopting her, basically. So it
definitely does a good job of satirizing both sides. You know what I mean? Like, it makes it makes extremism of either kind look ridiculous. You know. So and she's kind of in the middle. You know what I mean? Like, she just doesn't care. She's a pawn.
But
she doesn't. But she, to watch her catching on to realizing that she's being used and kind of develop a spine for the first time in her life. It's like it's a great movie. I love it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, great choice for your number 7. So no, definitely like that film. Like I said, it just didn't quite make the cut, but definitely was a good film. And no gripes with it or anything. But like I said, 96 was just a really, really tough year.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm pretty sure this one's not going to make your top 10. So this is kind of a personal favorite of mine, and it's actually a double feature again. But so I like one of the films, I don't like the other film. So, but it's actually going to be Last Man Standing.
Okay. What's the other one?
The other one is The Last Boy Scout.
I've wanted to watch that again. I hear it's actually better than you remember, or I remember.
So, I haven't, to be honest with you, I haven't watched it since I bought the DVD. But yeah, it's I just never really cared to watch the Last Boy Scout again. I don't remember caring for it, but I do like The Last Man Standing. It's always been kind of a favorite. I know it's a remake of one of your favorite movies. Is it Yojimbo? Which one is it?
Oh yeah, it is a remake of Yojimbo. Yeah, Kurosawa.
So it's a remake of Yojimbo. Basically, Yojimbo was basically with swords. This is with guns, of course. Right. Basically, Bruce Willis. It's interesting because it's got kind of a Western feel, but it's really more of a mobster film. But it feels kind of like old, rustic in the West. Basically, Bruce Willis is kind of he's running from something. You don't know quite what he's running from, but he just happens to come into like this town down south near the border called Jericho. And in that town, there's basically like 2 gangs that run the town. And they quickly find out that, he's got some skills shooting and killing people. And so they both kind of like are bidding to get him to be part of their gang. So he's kind of like crossed in a crossfire between like these 2 like mobster gangs that have taken over this town, and they're basically killing each other, and they're like scheming from each other, and he's like right in the middle of it, basically scheming on both sides to make money and that kind of stuff. But it's got a lot of action in there. There's a lot of bloodletting in that film, which is right up my alley. Like I said, it's not one that's going to win any Oscars or anything like that, but it's one that I've always just loved. I just love the action in there, and Bruce Willis is really, really cool in there. He just comes in like guns blazing, and it's got Christopher Walken in there, who always plays a pretty good bad guy, as he does in this one. Bruce Dern is in there is also as like a crooked cop or sheriff of the town. So it's got a few names in there, but just a really, really fun action film. like I said, so if you're into action and you like, seeing lots of gun violence and that sort of stuff, then I definitely suggest you check out Last Man Standing.
Cool.
That's number 7.
Yeah. I knew this was going to be on your list somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've known that I've loved this movie for years. So,
and I looked into it. I didn't realize it was I think it's a Walter Hill film, right? And he directed.
Yeah.
Didn't he direct The Warriors?
Yeah, he directed The Warriors, and a few other films that I like too. I can't remember some of the other ones off the top of my head, but yeah. The Warriors, of course, being one of my favorite movies of all time. So yeah, definitely my top.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah, I don't remember not liking it. I just don't remember anything about it at all. Except, I remember Bruce Willis is in it, and it's really, really violent, which, I'm not opposed to that either, honestly. So, yeah, I don't, nothing in my memory stands out about it, but I don't remember thinking it was a negative experience. If anything, I think I remember thinking it was a little better than I thought it would be. Because, again, that was one where the reviews were pretty bad, if I remember right.
For sure.
Again, not that that's the only indicator of quality, for sure. But yeah, I don't remember much about it. So I'll tell you what. I'll watch that again if you watch That Thing You Do Again.
We'll see. We'll discuss that off.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I don't remember not liking it. I just don't remember anything at all about it.
That's fair. Yeah. Then that happens, There's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that said, moving on to our number 6.
Okay. Well, not a whole lot to say about this one because we already covered it. My number 6 for 96 is When We Were Kings. So, just to say a little bit, it's one of the best documentaries ever, and I'm not a sports fan at all. I do like movies about sports. I like a lot of movies about sports and documentaries and stuff like that, but I'm not into sports at all. So you don't have to be a boxing fan or even a sports fan to really get a lot out of this movie. It's just a great portrait of Muhammad Ali, who I think is one of the greatest people who ever lived. Certainly one of the most camera-friendly and interesting, And it's mainly about that fight he had with George Foreman in 1974 in Zaire, and the went into planning it, the concert that went along with it, and it's like it's not even 90 minutes long. It just
no
by like that. It's just again, I highly recommend the new Criterion Blu-ray. It looks fantastic. It's got the other documentary that's completely about the concert. But it's an amazing movie. That's my number 6.
Cool. Well, yeah, it was just a few lower than mine. So yeah, like I said, we already kind of covered it. Definitely one that I like as well, and definitely one that, like I said, it's I'm not a huge documentary guy, not as much as you, anyways. You know what I mean? I like them, but it's not anything that I necessarily gravitate towards. So, but this is definitely one that's probably as far as docs go, it's probably definitely in my top 10 of my favorite documentaries, which says a lot because I don't like a whole lot of documentaries and barely own very many of them. Well, clearly I don't even own this one, but it's definitely a great movie, great film. Kind of a segue, but like Ali, that was one of the problems that I had with Ali, was because in that film with Will Smith, the ending of that film is basically almost a direct replica of that fight that's in this film. And so I always had an issue watching Ali because I was like, well, I've already seen a blow by blow of this fight, and they basically just replicated it almost blow by blow, you know what I mean? So it was just kind of weird, you know what I mean? To watch that film after having seen the documentary. So yeah, but no, great choice.
Cool.
And my number 6, and I know we're going to have some discussions about this one because of the placement of it. My number 6 is actually going to be Independence Day.
All right, yeah. Still in the shrink wrap.
Still in the shrink wrap, but only in the shrink wrap because I've seen it 8 million times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of the ones that, and that's the problem with a lot of these ones is I owned a lot of these on DVDs, and then I upgraded to Blu-ray at some point for better format, and just never got around to watching them. That happens.
You've already seen it 1,000 times, so
yeah, exactly. So it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. Everybody's probably pretty much has seen Independence Day, obviously about alien invasion. Everybody knows the classic scene where the White House gets blown up and then that sort of stuff.
You
But
mean
yeah,
the little cheap styrofoam miniature of the White
yeah,
House gets blown up?
yes. Hey man, back in '96, man, those were like cutting edge. Yeah, they were like cutting edge special effects. You know what I mean? And actually, a movie that probably catapulted Will Smith's career. Speaking of Will Smith, you know what I mean? It was like one of his like
unquestionably it did. Yeah.
Yeah, I know we talked about '95, and he starred in the Bad Boys film, which was a hit. But I think this film took him to like superstar status. You know what I mean?
Oh
where
yeah,
he could,
100%.
Where he was like commanding over like 20 million a picture, and he was like the hottest thing, in the market. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. But no, I this was a movie, and Jason and I talk about this all the time. This was a movie at one point I had like as my my all time top 10 when I first watched it. Of course.
Wait. You had it in your all-time top 2.
Yeah, it was number 2.
Tied with your favorite movie of all time. Now, what it is, and yeah, even then, I was like, "Come on."
Well, years have passed. I mean, give me a break. I was 17.
I know.
But the good news is my number one is still my number one, so that's never changed. But this obviously has dropped down the list. I still like it. It's still a great film. I still enjoy it. I still enjoy it for what it was, and it still is a great film about alien invasions and that sort of stuff. And it's got some great action scenes and has some really good scenes. Watching it now, it probably does seem a little dated and hokey in parts, but it's like one of those films where, I'm still not going to criticize it too much, only for the simple fact that I realize that, it's that kind of film that is going to do that. You know what I mean? Those big special effect films that everybody goes, oh my God, that's so amazing. Within 5-10 years, the special effects aren't that great anymore usually, you know what I mean? Because technology is caught up to it. So, and like you said, that White House is like a little miniature figurine version of it. And, that kind of stuff I didn't notice necessarily when I was first watching it, but now you can look at it now and you're like, oh yeah, that looks so cheesy. That looks so fake, but that's just the nature of technology, I guess, if you will. So, but yeah, that's my number 6 is Independence Day. So, yeah.
I love Independence Day. I've grown to like it more over the years, because at the time I remember like all the hype leading up to it. Like they started showing the trailers, a year in advance, I think almost. Right. And that was part of the problem with my initial reaction to it, is because I don't know if you remember the very first trailer, it looked scary. Like, I mean, it was like they were not, it looked like a serious movie. It looked like a serious, like an almost like Aliens kind of thing. You know what I mean? Just like, and I was not expecting it to be as goofy as it was. I mean, it's a pretty goofy movie. So when I went the first, when I saw it, I was expecting something dark and scary and, serious, I guess. And it's not any of those things really. I mean, it's super cheesy, super goofy. Even back then it was. But I've made my peace with that over the years. So, I really enjoy it now. I mean, like, I don't even mind the hokey effects, because, I love cheesy old horror movies and stuff like that. So I don't mind the sketchy effects, and some of the effects are still pretty good. It's a fun movie. It's not in my top 10. I think if I remember right, it's in the runner-ups, because it's just a really entertaining movie. And you're right, it definitely did catapult Will Smith to superstardom,
right.
For a few, for this year and the year after that, he had a hold on the 4th of July weekend. He kind of spoiled that with Wild Wild West for sure. That was the end of that appointment with Will Smith every year, July 4th. But I love it. I don't have anything against Independence Day. It's fun. Yeah. It's a super fun movie. Yeah, it's a good choice.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, that is well, good. Well, that is essentially going to kind of basically conclude our first set. Stay tuned for our next series. We'll do our top 5 through 1 and our honorable mentions. We'll be bringing that video to you soon. Once again, as always, hopefully you like this video. Like I said, I know we do a lot of list videos and a lot of list podcasts and shows, but we are working on some other shows coming up here in the near future. But we always urge you to, leave us a message, throw something in the comments, let us know kind of if there's any films that you want us to review or that we can talk about. We're definitely open to those types of discussions. Please, give us a like, subscribe to our channel. Like I said, we're a new channel that's just trying to grow, and we're constantly working on improvements. We're trying to get better, and hopefully our shows are getting better and our content's getting better as well. So anything you wanted to add there, Jason?
No, I think you got it. I'm having fun with these.
All right. Well, perfect. And I am as well. Well, until next time, we'll see you guys real soon. Thanks so much. Bye.